the other basins that contribute to the estuary. Lake Okeechobee, the single largest land use contributing pollution to the estuary, agriculture. The BMAP program, the whole process is misleading, it's ambiguous, it doesn't hold people accountable for pollution. It's not even set up in a way to find out who's causing the pollution. There's no enforcement associated with it. So there's no real surprise that things are getting worse. And without even acknowledging, I mean, first step in solving the problem is acknowledge you have the problem, and yet it doesn't. So again, I know you all are going to vote properly. You're going to tell 5 people to vote. My focus has been on kids, even the 20-somethings. They feel disenfranchised. But you sit down, you got to talk to them. They are going to make a difference out there. Next slide. If you want more technical information on the website, click on the Estuary Lake Okeechobee. You'll get this presentation as well as all the technical support documents. That were the basis for my work, has been the basis for my work. It's all available. Next slide. The thing to remember as well is additional storage, treatment, and conveyance is necessary all around the lake in order to stop the discharges so that we can all get out there and enjoy some good fishing. Any questions? Discharges of Lake Okeechobee to the St. Lucie Estuary are ignored by the state of Florida in their estuary BMAP program. Absolutely ignored. They just ignore it. That's why the difference. That's a big part of the difference, as well as the fact that these computer-generated best scenario assumptions that ignore other realities.
Would you flip back to the last slide with your website?
Sure. Website. GaryGoforth.net. Very creative.
Where was
Yes, sir.
Is there a reason for the agricultural loading? Has anything changed in terms of the farming or the type of farming you're running?
I can't answer the question. I don't know the answer to that. Yes, sir, Paul.
Could you give us some idea of the impact of biosolids on the nitrogen, contribution of nitrogen and phosphorus?
The question is, can I give you some impact or some idea of the impact of the biosolids? I've seen estimates that biosolids, now let's make sure we all have an understanding. When you convert a septic tank to centralized sewer, the problem doesn't go away. Let me just say that right away. What happens is you take what was a distributed pollution source and concentrate it into one wastewater treatment plant. And the plant typically has a water stream and a solid stream. And there's a lot of the nutrients and other hazardous material, pharmaceuticals, etc., end up in the solids. And that's referred to as sludge. And most treatment plants in the state of Florida try to recycle that sludge, if you will. And instead of filling up landfills, I think the state of Florida, with good intentions, established a goal of trying to let's try to reuse that. And so there's what's called biosolids, is those residuals. And there's 2 major categories. One is called Class AA, and that's where you treat those solids to kill or eliminate as best as possible the pathogens, the bacteria, the viruses, etc. And therefore, those biosolids, the Class AA, then can be distributed throughout most watersheds in the state of Florida without regulation. However, those biosolids still contain every bit of phosphorus and nitrogen as they did at the treatment plant. And yet they're not monitored, they're not regulated, they're not reported. Estimates are that over 1,000 metric tons per year of biosolids are taken and dumped on fields within the Lake Okeechobee watershed. Now, again, number is told to me. I can't verify whether that number is accurate, but the point is it was equal to the measured phosphorus and coming into the lake last year. So I don't know the answer to your question. It could be enormous. The state of Florida can't answer that question. They should. But the state of Florida doesn't even know. The other type of solids, biosolids, are those that are not treated for the pathogens. There are quite a bit more restrictions on the applications of those. However, the state of Florida hasn't reported on those in the last 5 years. Yes, sir.
Since the phosphorus nitrogen problem is not just a problem for us, it's a problem globally.
That's right.
Isn't there some research on how that could be precipitated out and reused, recycled, rather than just bioaccumulate and do further damage?
Yes, and I mentioned earlier the good staff of the state agencies have evaluated various alternatives for removing those nutrients. And they've implemented many solutions, as has Martin County, the various municipalities. One of them that I'm very familiar with is constructing wetlands, treatment wetlands, that can receive the stormwater runoff containing high nutrients, encourage the growth of plants, clean the water up in what you consider a natural way, and then filter or move on cleaner water. There's others that involve chemical precipitation. So yeah, the answer is there's a lot of alternatives that can work in certain situations. This is nothing new, nothing that can't be handled. Yes, oh, you get that. More questions? Yes, ma'am.
Your last slide mentioned that additional storage is needed.
Yes.
So as the geologist, what do you think about deep well injection around Lake Okeechobee, ASR projects?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mark Perry. Mark, the question is just a little opinion on deep injection wells and ASRs.
Well, it's an opinion, but basically the ASRs, after restored recovery, in the shallow part of the Florida aquifer, about 1,000 feet. Deep injection wells are 3,000 feet. Deep injection wells are water disposal. And in the ASR regional study that the state and the Corps did, determined that we're going to need that water at the surface, so we're not going to consider deep injection wells as a part of the solution. And on the ASRs, they actually limited from 330 that were estimated to include in the Comprehensive Everglades Plan down to 134 possible. And so they are planning some north of the lake for the Lake Okeechobee Watershed project, about 78 or 80 of the ASRs in association with reservoirs and other things. But this new trend to say, well, let's also include these deep injection wells is something we're not in favor of at all, because it's disposal of water. It shoots it down the boulder zone. Yes, we have about 180 to 200 of them in South Florida, mainly used for deep injection of wastewater. The city of Stuart has one. But it's not meant to for the purpose of putting surface water down in and getting rid of it. The other real critical point is it doesn't do it fast enough. And if you were to try to stem the 3,000 to 5,000 cubic feet per second that are discharges to the estuaries, when one well it counts for about 23 cubic feet per second. You can do the math and figure out we need hundreds and hundreds of wells, deep injection wells, to stop those outflows. So in an emergency estuary protection, it's not going to help at all. 23 cubic feet per second, one well, compared to 3,000 cubic feet per second for the discharges. So, not helpful. Yeah.
May I ask a question on that well? Of those wells, which is the oldest?
Which is the oldest?
The oldest wells we have out there.
The oldest wells we have? Well, they're called Class 1 injection wells, or underground injection wells, and the state tracks them and permits them. And I don't know about how old they are. There's one or two that are actually hazardous waste up in Central Florida that are injecting hazardous waste. And some of them are injecting more recently the reverse osmosis brine water. So when we bring water out of the upper Floridan for our drinking water, it's saltier, and we have to put it through reverse osmosis for potable water. We used to depend on surface water in the surface aquifer, which is like the first 200 to 300 feet, rainwater recharge. But now we're depending on the Florida, upper Florida aquifer for that, which is briny. So that brine solution that's left over after we filter it, basically, for potable water, goes down into the deep injection well. So it's deep injection of brine from reverse osmosis, wastewater, and some hazardous waste. But they're going back to, Florida's one of the few states that has it, but I think it goes back to, you know,
We're the only
early
state using it.
1900s. Yeah, 1990, 1980s. I know they really started out.
20 years.
Oh, yeah.
At least.
Yeah, plus the fact it doesn't help the national park down there.
Florida Bay.
They don't get the
Yeah,
water.
the water isn't going. It's still going places.
Yes, sir.
Gary, assuming we have the right people in the state government,
Right.
what are the top 3 things we want them to do?
Well, that's a broad question. My focus is on the water resources in the state of Florida, and certainly.
I'm talking about in water, and related to water.
Right. Strengthening the regulations and the legislation for protecting the water quality. And that would be Lake Okeechobee water quality, Estuary water quality, the Floridian, the springs, the water quality surrounding the Florida springs. The second will be consumptive use permits. I think the state is over allocating a limited resource and allowing business owners, whether they be farmers or others, to extract more water out of the ground than can be sustained. So those are the two. The third, there's probably a lot more brighter people than me that can offer those.
Just along that line, assuming that we can put stronger laws in place, right? Is there something that a farmer can do to reduce?
Oh, absolutely, and it's very
Best
encouraging.
practices somehow.
Many farmers are doing an outstanding job. Please, let's make that clear. And in fact, if the state were to do a basin by basin assessment like I do, they would identify these farmers. They would say, geez, this basin is doing wonderful. What specifically are you doing on your cow-calf operation or dairy operation or citrus that is helping? And then they could share that information. There's also a lot of literature on best management practices and agricultural practices that could be implemented. In fact, many are being implemented. There's everything from fertilizer application, from even the way they apply their water has an effect. You know, put too much on, then you're going to unnecessarily force a lot of the nutrients off your property. Water management, water containment, numerous and well studied. So there is a lot that can be done. And it's not just the ag folks, it's us. You know, the fertilizer ordinances that are in place are excellent. The septic conversion program should continue. All around the lake, there's specific applications and specific best management practices that can be applied. And in fact, this document right here, work we did in 2013, has a laundry list of specific best management practices for different land uses. It's been well studied throughout the country for decades. It's a matter of implementing them, working with the landowner to make sure they're implemented correctly, monitoring as necessary to make sure they're performing as well as possible to really achieve the benefits that they're capable of. Yes, sir.
Gary, the EA reservoir, we all know, got put into law now, but the appropriation for it could take who knows.
Right.
So my question is, where the state money has already been dedicated, will there be movement towards starting to do some of that using state money, and hopefully the feds, who historically is always behind in their disbursement of money? What's going to happen there?
Yeah, I'm honestly not qualified to answer that question. There are others that are connected to the South Florida Water Management District has an excellent record of moving out ahead of the federal government. In fact, on the C-44 reservoir stormwater treatment area, they've actually stepped up and done some work that would allocate. And so the Water Management District is probably the right place to ask. They've got a very good track record going out ahead of the federal government. Yes, ma'am.
So, my hometown is on the upper reaches of the Susquehanna River, which goes into Chesapeake Bay.
Yes.
And I had
got some good regulatory programs. And to show my even-handedness, the EAA farmers have one of the best regulatory programs in the country, probably in the world, in terms of how effective they have implemented best management practices and how effective they've reduced certain phosphorus levels. So the state has got examples of good regulatory programs, and in many cases it requires a very strong legislative backbone. Yeah, we're about to, let me turn over to George. I don't know how much time
I was
we
just
got.
going to say, what I'd like to do is get Paul to give his administration. If there's any questions, then maybe we get both of you to finish that up and we'll move forward.
Did a great job. Okay.
Jim had a question.
Introduce Dr. Paul Gray of the Audubon Society. Barbara, if you could scroll down to the 3 slides.
Yeah, actually, I only have 2 slides.
What?
So,
Oh, wait.
if we could actually, could you go back to that slide Gary just had up? I want to point something out. I get a lot of talks about Lake Okeechobee and talk about the nutrient problems, and people are always like, I just can't believe it's that bad, and we're doing so little to control it. And it's really true, and Gary is right, that we've just been doing virtually nothing for the last several years, and we know how to do this, and like these BMPs, if we're going to ask people to reconfigure their properties and do things really differently, we've got to get cost share for them. We've got to get money out of the legislature to help them change their properties. And people say, well, why are you trying to get money for the polluters? Well, if we're going to get them to change, we've got to help them. So this is something that is something that we could do better, and I hope with the new governor. But when DEP did their BMAP, they didn't even cite this. You know, Gary gave them this document. This is the latest, greatest information we have, and they wouldn't even use it. So there's been some dysfunction. We're going to have a new administration in pretty soon. Hopefully we'll do a better job. Okay, I'll quit preaching. Now, can we go to my other slides? George asked me to kind of talk about Lake Okeechobee water levels. Everybody knows we're working on the dike and we're going to fix it. And what they want to do is make a new schedule, a new water level management plan. Keep it going. There we were. Okay, go back one. Okay, this is a complicated slide. We'll work through it. But so everybody says, well, we'll fix the dike and we'll manage the lake differently and it'll help the estuary and all that. And so I just wanted to kind of tell you what is best for the lake, and when we move forward and look at the new way to manage the lake, what's best for the lake and what's best for the estuary. And basically these are water levels going up and down over time, and these blue bars are the preferable range. This stage envelope we always talk about, 12.5 to 15.5. And so if you stay in there, you're usually pretty good. But one thing to notice here is during these years recently, these high years, we didn't get down to 12.5. And when you don't do that, it's really bad for the lake. Marshes need to dry out every year. And that really is the most important thing, is how low you can draw it down every single year. It's kind of like breathing. You know, we all like to breathe in oxygen, but in order to do that again, you got to breathe out and then breathe back in. The lake needs to go up and down. And so when we didn't get down to those levels, we really lost a lot of submerged aquatic vegetation on the lake. Can we look at the next slide? And all you need to look at right here is this little corner down here. And basically they did some analyses. When the lake stays above 12 feet, the average submerged vegetation in the lake has only been about 20,000 acres. And when the lake drops below 12 feet, it goes to 46. Twice as much. That's like a difference of 40 square miles of plants on the lake. And the lake's got to get down because they're in the deepest water zones, and it's got to let them get strong and recover. And so it's really important for us to get down to about 12 feet every year. And if you go back to the previous slide.
Oops.
Okay, we're done. See the bullet that says earlier work suggested 12 to 15 feet? When the restudy was done, that was the stage envelope. And when Recover made the stage envelope, they made 12.5 to 15.5. And quite frankly, that's too high. 12 to 15 is the right number. And so when we go back and we look at the new regulation schedule, what we're going to try to do is talk to Recover and say, you guys need to change this 12.5 to 15.5 down to 12 to 15. That's better for the lake, and we have scientific data to confirm that. And then when they run their models, they say, how often are we in the preferred range? Because right now they run it and they report on the wrong range. We need them to report on the correct range. So we're going to work on that. 12 to 15 would be better for the estuary. Representative Mass is talking about getting the lake lower. Well, we need it 6 inches lower on average for the health of the lake. And if it is 6 inches lower, then that's 6 inches further from harmful releases that you guys will be. So it's better for the estuary.
And with that in mind, Recover also said the flow for you guys, is the harmful threshold, so 1,170 cubic feet per second is considered harmful. And if you guys are getting 1,000 CFS, and you're getting all the nutrients with that, you're getting all the fresh water, you're getting all the suspended sediments, that's considered fine when they run their model. And so they say, here's how many weeks of harmful releases you get, and they don't count the 1,000 CFS. They only count it if it goes above 1170. So you guys also have a performance measure that's not really describing what's best for your estuary. And that needs to be changed with Recover. We got to get to those guys and say, you know, locking the boat through is okay, that's not going to harm it. So there's some low number that's okay for the estuary, but it's not 1170. You guys have the wrong performance measure. So when you get told this is how many weeks of harm you're going to get, it's not really an accurate number. It's a number that was made so you'll get harmed and they're not going to call it harm. So that's something that a lot of us technical people are going to be working on as we get ready to look at the new regulation schedule. Make sure that when they run modeling scenarios, they run ones that honestly tell us what's going to happen to our resource and not kind of cover it up with bad performance measures. Yes?
When you're talking about the 1170 as being not harmful below, but harmful above, are you talking about C-44, agricultural drainage basin, and Lake Okeechobee, or just Lake Okeechobee?
Just the lake and the drainage basin. It's what's going out of S80, not coming out of the lake, but going out of S80. And again, you know, what they do is when they run these model runs, they report how everything's affected, and they say, here's how many weeks of harmful releases you got. And it's only the weeks that are above 1170. So, you know, if you count all the weeks that are between 500 and 1,000, which are not good for your estuary, that's a lot of weeks that aren't being reported. So when we look at this, we're like, oh, that's not too bad. Well, actually, it's worse than what you're knowing. So we've got to get a performance measure that matches up to the real needs of the estuaries and the real tolerance. Yes?
I've noticed that over the past 10 years that our own basin has deteriorated our estuary every year, worse and worse. How much help are we going to get out of the C-44 project as far as the reservoir?
You'll get a lot of help, but it's like any other project in SERB, it's not going to do everything. And they estimated you guys need, how much storage over here? I think 200,000, and it's gonna do 50 or 60. So it's gonna help, but again, we got more projects to do. So it's you know, these are like steps to the bathroom. You know, you got to take every single one to get there. And any individual one doesn't get you there, but we got to do a lot of projects. So C-44 is going to be a really good step. I want y'all to remember that. Okay.
We know that if we have a storm, the lake can rise by 3 feet fairly easily. And what you're talking about here is 6 inches.
Right.
Congressman is talking about significantly lower than 12 to 15. I know that you've been quoted as saying that this is preferred, but can we go lower without harming the lake?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Notice this infrequent equals beneficial. Right now, we're only at 14 feet, and we're at the beginning of the dry season, so the lake might go down to 11 feet. With all of our submerged plants gone, that's actually ideal. We want to get the lake down to let the sunlight, they grow at about the 9 to 10 foot contour, and we need to get the lake really shallow to get the sunlight to the bottom so the seeds can germinate and the plants can grow. So we can go down, and they have what they call the lake, and it's going below 11 feet for 80 days. And once you exceed that, then then that's considered you're getting too low, too long. But 11 feet for 80 days is fine, and especially right now.
So 10 feet, 9 feet, that's
Yeah. You can go to 10 feet once every 10 years, but 9 feet is not good. And those islands on the south end, they're organic, and it oxidizes their soils, and they sink, and then it makes them less functional. You can go low every now and then, but we have the performance measures that express it. And again, remember, they're going to run the model, and we're going to have droughts, we're going to have floods, we're going to have these low waters, we're going to have those high waters, and they're unavoidable. So we're not saying that the lake has to be locked into this one schedule, but that's the goal for the lake. Just like 1170 is not the goal for your estuaries. Closer to 0 is the goal for your estuary. And we need to set good goals that really reflect the health of our resource. And then when they run the model, you can see how often we're getting harmed or we're in a good range.
I'm hoping that we, as a group, don't promote a 12 to 15, that we promote a little lower. We've had enough. We've had enough. And they dump on us when they're concerned with the dike. And I would hope that we, all of us, and you in science, can promote, somehow figure out if the lake can survive 11 people who can go back.
Well, yeah,
As
so.
lower end instead of 12.
Yeah, well, so the science for the lake really says 12 to 15. And so if you're gonna make a performance measure that really reflects the health of the lake, that's the real number.
What is the real number again?
12 to 15. But you know, and that gets to trade-offs. When they run the model, they say, well, if we keep the lake 12 to 15, here's how often the estuary gets hurt. If we keep the lake lower, here's how often, and you might opt for that other option and say, well, we like the lower lake. And you're doing that for the estuary, not for the lake. But we just need to have honest performance measures for each of our ecological systems to make sure when we run it, we can say, here's how well the lake does, here's how well the estuaries do. I hope that makes sense.
Dr. Gray?
Because, you know, for the lake, we have to have an honest one. All water supply guys, they have perfect performance measures. They lay out exactly what they want, and it tells if they got it or not. And we have to do that for each of our natural systems to make sure we get a true, honest evaluation of how our system's gonna fare in the future.
Dr. Gray,
Management plans.
there's a question
Yes?
over here.
How are you? Thank you for coming. Stephen Layton, Chief of Staff for Brian Mast here in Florida. So I just want to reiterate some of the things that you mentioned here, because I know there's a lot of side posturing going on here the last couple of weeks of people in this room and others. On your other slide, with the 46K, I think it's the next one, right down there on the bottom. So the lower the lake, right, we go from 20K AC average to 46. The lower the lake, the better. Is that correct, based on what's on your slide?
No, not the lower the better.
He's shaking his head yes, and you're saying no.
Okay, the lake's got to go back up. This year we only went up to about 14 feet.
Right.
And so that leaves about 15,000 acres of the marsh completely dry.
Right.
So they're not, actually it's good to let them dry periodically, but if they're dry all the time, then they're uplands and they're not marsh anymore. You've lost a lot of marsh. And so if you go down to 10 feet every year, for instance, you wouldn't fill the lake up a lot of years. You'd have a lot of just dry years for your marsh. So it's a trade-off.
Right, fair enough to say, because we don't know what the weather is going to do or predict, right? And so keeping the lake level lower, what the Congressman is predicting or trying to accomplish during the rainy season or the winter months would be a good thing based on scientific information. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
okay. Because there's a lot of people in here that are scientists that aren't really scientists that are saying different. So I just want to state that. Unfortunately, you can't be here. And then,
and just for everybody to know, he came out and went out on the lake with me in the airboat, and we rode around and talked. So he's learning. So.
And it's fair to say, because Mark's in our office, it seems like every week, updating him on. Yeah, that's it. I can't get in there anymore. You had also mentioned what is a decent number, if we may, because obviously, whatever you all want, he goes and fights for it. And he started that back January 12th of 17 on the House floor. What is an optimal number? Because I think the gentleman in the front row said it best, that we're tired of getting dumped on, right? I'm seventh generation, my son's 8. We talked about children. I think that's the optimal thing here. Family goes way back. What is a number that's reasonable that he can articulate to South Florida Water Management, that the two of you, based on your knowledge and experience, is a reasonable level?
A reasonable level for the lake?
Yes, sir, during the rainy and winter months.
Well, that's what that 12 to 15 is. It goes to a low of 12 and a high of 15 on average.
But you're saying it would be better for the lake to be a little lower. And if we have to wait for models to come out, because I'm not going to hold you to a number like the Congressman held South Florida Water Management, because they said they could go all the way down to 7 foot, which we know is inaccurate. However, is there something that we as a community can work on with them? And I think you said it best, the next governor, one of you said, working with whoever the next governor is to really understand this for the entire system is going to be best. But do we have that number today? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, well, ideally for the lake, forget everything else.
Right.
If we're just trying to take care of the lake,
Just the lake,
that's
that's
a really
right.
concern. 12 to 15 is the number, and you can go down, and it's actually within 6 inches of 12 to 15 between wet and dry, and then you can go below 11 once every 10 years. That's what lake scientists think is ideal. But for the estuary, you know, you guys don't want 1170. You want maybe 100 might be permissible for locking boats or little things. And so you need to set up performance measures for your estuary releases that says, here's where we are. And then when the district runs the model, they'll say, okay, you guys are in the right range 80% of the time, the lake's in the right range 100% of the time. You can say, well, we want to be closer to 100, and they can tweak that and make the lake go down. And
When you say lake scientist, who are we talking about exactly?
People in the Water Management District, and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and me, and you know, a lot of people work on lakes. So there's quite a lot of information about the lake and its history.
Good. And I think that the last question is, and it's directed to, are you a doctor as well? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that I...
Doctor.
Doctor.
Thank you, doctor.
So...
Patient's dying,
The other doctor sits down immediately, he's done.
Doesn't avoids eye contact.
In our calculations, based on meeting with a number of people, including all of you, there's roughly 6 foot of water a year that's left on the lake for those permittable individuals, right? Yes. Based on calculations. And I think if people really saw the numbers, they would be very surprised. And you had mentioned earlier that maybe there's too many permits that are being given out that kind of encompass that 6 foot of water. And some are for golf course, some is for ag, some are for, I think, when we talked with Mark, deep water injections for the aquifer, recharging things, a number of different uses in those permits. Why would you recommend giving less versus keeping where we're at, or giving more so there is less water on the lake throughout the year?
Okay, great. Let me clarify. When I was talking about over allocation of the groundwater, I was referring more to Central Florida and the springs.
Okay, fair enough.
So I wasn't making a comment on the permitting of Lake Okeechobee.
So the permits that are currently given of that roughly 6 foot of water, if we could give more and keep less on the lake for our community, and being selfish for right now, and then working with the West Coast as well, they're wanting more when they're not given more, and we're getting more when we don't want any. Is it fair to say that that would be beneficial to continue those permits? And because it was brought up this week that, you know, the Indians weren't going to get what they needed, and there was a big scare tactic taking place, and then speaking to them, and Brian sitting down for 3 hours with them at their tribe in the last 2 weeks, assuring them that he is not in favor of pulling any of those, but we need to also be mindful of scientific data that you guys come up with. Is that is that a reasonable number that's currently given out by South Florida Water Management?